I think Stephen's going to join us in a minute. Okay, good evening, and welcome to the Southern Georgia Bay Chamber of Commerce Simcoe North Federal All Candidates Meeting. On the panel tonight, from the Conservative Party, Adam Chambers, Green Party of Canada, Ray Little, People's Party of Canada, Stephen Mack, who will be joining us shortly, I think, Liberal Party of Canada, Ryan Roca, and the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, Russ Emo. Format this evening is quite straightforward. 1 minute each for introduction, 2 minutes for each answering the questions, and 2 minutes for each for final remarks. A bell will ring when the 2 minutes is almost up, say 10 seconds before. And yeah, we have a lot to discuss for sure in the 1 hour we have. So we'll get started, and I apologize we're starting a little bit late, but we'll go to the first question. And I'm just going to go in order of this, what I have on my screen here in terms of answering questions. So, and I'll let you know who it is. So first we'll start with Russ Emo, but here's the question. Housing and red tape. How would your party help build more affordable housing in rural and small town areas like Simcoe North? For example, what local red tape is a concern? If eliminated, what will ensure that standards that they were made to protect will be enforced? Environmental, building codes, densities, renters, aesthetics, that kind of thing. So anyway, so I'll leave that to you, Russ. Housing and red tape.
Yeah, so basically we've got a big issue here with housing affordability. I have 5 children. A couple of new grandchildren just came in this last few months. So everything's exciting, but it's getting harder and harder for individuals to be able to afford these housings. And so what we're looking at for the CHP is we would reduce or eliminate the foreign purchases of homes, businesses, and farmland. Every Canadian deserves to have a home to raise their family. The price of home is basically out of reach because we have foreign investors and businesses buying homes. They have created a supply crisis, and with this increases the demand, and therefore we've got these prices going up and up. Individuals cannot compete with these investors, as most barely have the capital to get an affordable home, let alone get into a bidding war with those that have, the larger resources. I can't imagine, a couple with small children trying to get themselves a home only to have themselves outbid by somebody that's going to come along and basically just turn it into an investment property, turn it into an Airbnb, and a lot of these individuals may not even live in the country, which makes it even more difficult to kind of keep that stuff going. So the CHP would also reduce the demand for new housing by dramatically reducing the levels of immigration, refugees, foreign students, visas, etc. We just can't build enough houses fast enough to accommodate the millions who have been crossing our borders both legally and illegally. The CHP will attack the other causes of inflation that have raised the price of everything, including in the housing industry, by scrapping the carbon tax and implementing mandatory balanced budgets. The CHP will also reduce the economic barriers to help ownership and affordable rent. So we really need to get to the base of all this. I mean, as you drive through Toronto in certain areas, you see houses being built, but you always look and say, are these houses actually going to individuals or are they going to corporations? And that's what we really got to get to is find out and make it more available to the individuals, to the people. And if it comes down to it, go back to the Bank of Canada's basic rate was, they
It's
were
time there.
supposed to. Oh,
That's
is my
time
time
there.
up?
Yeah, that's it. Time. Did you hear the bell? Maybe you didn't
I
hear the
did not
bell.
hear a bell. No, no.
Okay, we'll get it
My
closer to the screen.
apologies.
Fair enough. We're certainly having our issues because I forgot to do introductions. So hey, we'll just keep going with the questions. And I got the bell closer here. So
Okay, my
can you guys
apologies.
hear that?
Try it again.
Nothing?
Nope.
Just
Nothing?
barely.
Nothing there?
Maybe just say 10 seconds.
Just
Yeah.
raise your
When I hear the
hand,
bell, I'll
Peter.
say 10 seconds. Okay, perfect. Okay, next on my screen is Adam. Same question. How would your party help build more affordable housing in rural and small town areas like Simcoe North?
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Look, housing is one of the most important issues that we've been hearing. I've been hearing at least on the doorsteps, knocking on doors with our residents here in Simcoe North. I consider myself in all of the above category. We need in all of the above different kinds of houses, apartments, nonprofit housing cooperatives, uh, houses, big and small, everywhere in between, townhomes. One of the biggest barriers to housing is the cost of building homes is the cost of homes, which is why under the conservative plan, we have proposed to reduce the GST on all new homes. That's all new homes for anyone under all new homes for under $1 million, which will cover many homes and spur the development of new houses, reducing taxes. And the other ways in which we can work with municipalities is actually to incentivize them to reduce red tape, to fast track permits, and to release land to become housing. And how do we do that? With their targets, if municipalities increase permits, they will get additional funds from the federal government to support that. That also includes funding some of if a township or municipality would like to lower its development charges, cost sharing with some municipalities, some of that cost reduction so that the price of homes in terms of the permitting and the red tape is reduced. So it's lower taxes and it's faster permitting and it's getting more permits approved faster and working with municipalities to do that.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Okay, next to the Green Party with Ray Little. How would your party help build more affordable housing in rural and small town areas like Simcoe North?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. This is a slightly tricky topic, and it is hard to separate from the number one issue Simcoe North voters have raised with me, which is affordability. Housing affordability, Peter, is about the economics. At the moment, demand far outstrips supply. And the absolute fastest way to improve the housing issue here in Simcoe North is to address the demand side. Partly because we've got labor shortages in construction and the trades, and partly because the cost and lead time of building new homes using 100-year-old techniques is just simply too long. Not to mention the 4 different levels of government that require approval on building a new home. And so on the demand side, Peter, we've just simply got to address this issue of corporations buying up single family homes and multi-unit residential buildings and jacking the rental prices and inflating the purchase prices. And absolutely, we've got to do something about uncoordinated immigration. We also need to address the Airbnb effect that's just simply driving up the costs of renting and buying homes. And this is at a time, Peter, when 30% of Simcoe North residents have to access local food banks because they can't afford to feed their families. We also need to remember Canadians who have recently purchased new homes and might have some higher than usual mortgages. And so generally, we do need to protect home values in Canada. And so I'd do a variation on the Team Canada approach. I'd include representatives from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments, along with private industry. And I'd give them a 3-month mandate to come up with solutions and legislation that addresses the issues that are working against Canadians and supporting municipalities that so far are the only ones providing solutions, like Vancouver, who's got a, that's it?
No, 10 seconds. You get 10 seconds.
Vancouver's got a non-resident tax, and Aurelia has recently introduced a limit on Airbnbs. We've got to renew the implied promise to Canadians of home ownership.
Great. Thanks, Ray. Now we have Stephen, and we'll give you the 2 minutes. Each question is 2 minutes. And again, with the housing red tape, how would your party help build more affordable housing in rural and small town areas like Simcoe North?
Okay, thank you, Peter. We have to be careful here, as Ray said. I mean, there are very few tools that the federal government has that can directly override municipal and provincial laws and bylaws that govern housing development. The PPC respects the division of power per our Constitution. And if the red tape is municipal, you need to reach out to your municipal politicians and vote in better ones. Now, as your MP, I would help lobby on your behalf and use my bully pulpit, perhaps to help the people of Simcoe North deal with all levels of government Some of you are surely aware that I already take active interest in municipal and provincial issues. The PPC does not support the idea of government-built or taxpayer-funded housing, except for military housing, prisons, or certain treatment facilities. Those projects of yesteryear are great examples of failed government policy, and most have been demolished since. Instead, the PPC platform focuses on addressing the root causes of housing unavailability and unaffordability. These are largely economic. First of all, we would impose a moratorium on immigration of all kinds and expel criminals, foreigners, illegal immigrants, and visa overstayers. Mass immigration has driven housing demand to skyrocket, mostly in certain major urban areas, but hey, no part of Canada has been untouched. Secondly, we have directed Bank of Canada to adopt an inflation target of 0. That will help cool down inflation, including housing cost inflation. We would abolish the CMHC, which fuels the housing crisis instead of cooling it down. It induces many Canadians to overstretch their debt load, and by making it easier to raise debt, causes prices to increase. We'd restrict foreign buyers, money launderers, and speculators from gobbling up Canadian residential properties. And finally, we would respect local zoning. We believe in radical decentralization, and where government is unavoidably part of a solution, the more local, the better. We need to address root causes, not symptoms.
Thanks, Stephen. And finally, for the first question, we'll go to Ryan Roca from the Liberal Party. Housing red tape. How would your party help build more affordable housing in rural and small town areas like Simcoe North?
Hello, thanks for having me. The Liberal government will build more homes in Simcoe North that people can afford through Canada's most ambitious housing plan since World War II. If elected, I will help a Mark Carney-led government double the pace of construction to 500,000 a year by Canada back into the home building business and incentivizing the private sector. We're going to make more homes more affordable by eliminating the GST on homes up to $1 million for first-time home buyers, reducing the cost by up to $50,000. We're going to make the housing market work better by catalyzing private capital, cutting red tape, and lowering the cost of home building. To accomplish this, we will cut municipal development for multi-unit residential housing for 5 years. Cutting in half is expected to increase private investment by $8 billion. The Liberals are also facilitating the conversion of existing structures into affordable housing units. And we are going to build on the success of the Housing Accelerator Fund, which further reduces housing bureaucracy, zoning restrictions, and other red tape. In contrast, Pierre and the Conservatives work towards cutting the Housing Accelerator Fund, something that experts agree will build more homes. That's not leadership, that's ideology. The rationale may be why Pierre when he was Harper's housing minister, he oversaw the lowest amount of housing starts in the past decade. The Liberal government will stand strong against Trump's tariffs, create new jobs, cut taxes for the middle class, and build the fastest growing economy in the G7. We will build Canada strong.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, we'll go to the second question now. Oh, for just to join us late there, I missed the introductions. Totally my mistake. In the conclusions, we'll have a 3-minute conclusion if you want to have that. Again, second question here: job and trade threats. With trade tensions rising, what industries would your party invest in to create good jobs in Simcoe North and protect us from future tariff shocks? And we'll go to Adam for this to start.
Thank you, Peter. We need to give the world what they're asking of Canadians. We've had countless world leaders come to Canada and ask for our natural gas. So that includes building an energy corridor east-west in this country to carry traditional fuels and clean energy, hydroelectric and nuclear power, east-west in this country. But it will also help bring our resources, natural resources, to markets where we can export them. By doing so, we will reduce our reliance on the Americans as our single largest purchaser of most of our energy products. So we need to strengthen our own internal economy to reduce our reliance on America. We also need to reduce trade barriers, internal trade barriers that provinces and the federal government have that prevent the flow of goods, but also people and professionals and people in different industries across provincial borders. This is something that a conservative government would take very seriously. We would remove all of the federal restrictions. We would also incentivize provinces to reduce their trade barriers by effectively paying them a portion of the increase in the federal government revenues that are a direct result of a reduction of those barriers. So we need to move goods and people more easily across this province, and we need to get our resources to market.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Next, go to Ray. Jobs and trade threats. With trade tensions rising, what industries would your party invest in to create good jobs in Simcoe North and protect us from future tariff shocks?
Well, viewers, I am going to answer the question about Simcoe North here, but I'd just say that it's hard to separate this issue again from affordability, especially with 30% of us making less than $40,000 a year. I actually support eliminating federal income tax on this population segment. And believe it or not, Greens are fiscally responsible. The way we'd pay for this tax cut is through a 1% increase in corporate tax. Corporations already paying less tax rates than the average Canadian. But to answer this question directly for Simcoe North jobs, the first thing I do is champion what's called the 100-mile diet. It's this concept of us being able to get the food and nutrition we need within a 100-mile radius of where we live. And I would go to every grocery store, every restaurant, and encourage all residents in Simcoe North to buy from the local farm producers their groceries. The second thing I'd do is I would drive funding into the local tourism district to promote and capitalize on a fast rising trend called ecotourism. Let's face it, we live in one of the most beautiful ridings in our country and even the world. And so this will drive prosperity pretty quickly, especially given what's happening down south and Canadians and Europeans avoiding traveling there. The third thing I'd do is I'd find R&D funding for our local educational institutes to promote training and development. And relating this back to the housing industry, we'd explore new technology and we can train people on building houses. We can create more efficient processes, more cost-effective techniques, and potentially develop new, cleaner industries right here in Simcoe North. And finally, I've championed at least a half a dozen infrastructure investments. I've published all of these on the Simcoe North greenparty.ca news section website. I'd invite people to check them out there.
Great, thanks, Ray. Next, same question, jobs and trade threats to Stephen. With trade tensions rising, what industries would your party invest in to create good jobs in Simcoe North and protect us from future tariff shocks?
Well, I'm not going to answer a question maybe the way you'd expect, but I don't agree at all with the idea of governments investing, so to speak, in specific industries or people. I mean, it's just spending. Don't fall for the tricky ad speak of the Trudeau government, unless, of course, you actually think that the state should own the means of production. We don't believe in pork barrel politics. I don't see how an MP can make factories or businesses appear in specific places, at least not in any ethical or legal manner. However, a PPC government would develop policies, regulations, and laws that encourage all kinds of businesses in all parts of Canada to be started more easily and to attract capital into our economy. Only the free market can efficiently allocate capital to where it's most productive and job creating. And as for trade and tariffs, which you mentioned, well, the PPC is the only party that is not encouraging panic over the recent U.S. tariff threats and hardcore negotiating tactics. I'm disgusted, really, by the media blitz that encourages elbows up, fear, and fake patriotism. The PPC believes in free people, free enterprise, free markets, and free trade. Americans are not our enemies. Instead, we take Trump at his word that he wants reciprocity, propose that we drop all tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers such as supply management and various digital rights and CanCon barriers, and exhort him to follow his own words. And to think we can win a trade war with the US is simply stupid, and I don't think it's really going to happen. Similarly stupid is the belief that negotiations can be done publicly in the media. That's all just electioneering, and I suggest we all ignore it. If Trump whines about a trade deficit, well, then I'd remind him that it's on America, not us. If we don't buy enough of their stuff, well, they should price it better or market it better. And anyway, let's compete as we have already and do a better job. Countries don't trade. People and companies do, and governments just get in the way. We need to find ways to get out of voluntary trade with
10
free
seconds.
countries. And I'm not saying globalism. We should pick who we trade with and only trade with members of the free world that we can trust and who are fair dealers. So I foresee a world where prosperous Canada operates as a partner with a prosperous regional trading bloc and with everyone else. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, we'll go to Ryan now. With trade tensions rising, what industries would your party invest in to create good jobs in Simcoe North and to protect us from future tariff shocks?
The trade threats have brought a lot of uncertainty into the lives of Canadians. President Trump wants to break us so that America can own us. We will not let that happen. In the moment of crisis, we need to fight for our workers and businesses with measures of our own. We need to build an economy that is more productive, competitive, and resilient, and fundamentally less reliant on the US. We can't control President Trump, but we can make it easier for Canadians to weather the storm by putting more money back in their pockets, while also supporting local businesses and supporting the people that work every day to provide for their families here in Simcoe North. Liberal government will cut costs for those families by delivering a middle tax cut, saving two-income families up to $825 a year, expanded dental coverage, saving $800 a year, expanding $10 a day daycare. Around 900,000 families or 900,000 children are benefiting from affordable childcare, saving up to $16,000 a year per child. Pierre and the Conservatives oppose these programs that have been proven to work and help family. Meanwhile, the Liberal government is working on expanding this program to create more daycares at $10 a day. In addition, the Liberal government will support our farmers, our manufacturers, and reward Canadian-made products. We are helping individuals affected by tariffs, and we are investing in Canadian workers with skilled training grants. The Liberal government does not leave anyone behind.
Thanks, Ryan. Finally, we'll go to Russ. With trade tensions rising, what industries would your party invest in to create good jobs in Simcoe North and protect us from future tariff shocks?
So, work is a good thing. People are happiest, when they're working and contributing to society. So the CHP would put Canada back to work with a nationwide infrastructure stimulus package that would basically fix our cities, our highways, and our bridges. Jobs stimulate the economy. The CHP would revive the plan that was successfully used in Canada to combat unemployment after the Second World War. The Bank of Canada was ordered to make virtually interest-free loans to provinces, municipalities, and cities for infrastructure projects for roads, highways, bridges, rail lines, ports. Today, we could include hospitals, urban and interurban passenger rail lines, water, sewage treatment plants, buildings, repairing. The infrastructure would create employment with the construction industry while providing employment in the facilities when they are operational. There must be a symbiotic relationship between industry and employees recognizing their dependence on one another and working together to resolve issues. CHP would work together with industry to ensure that we have a robust employment market. The most efficient engine of economic growth is free enterprise, the freedom of individuals and groups to initiate, own, and manage a business undertaking. We regard the independent business enterprise, including agricultural, as the backbone of the private free enterprise system and as a chief source of new employment. When citizens are allowed to use their own gifts and imagination to create employment, our economy flourishes. A CHP government would remain out of the business sector to allow the free market to determine business successes and failures. A CHP government would encourage a spirit of social and moral responsibility to protect the employment rights in our Christian heritage. A CHP government would also ensure that our Canadian businesses are responsible to mitigate the negative aspects of growth, such as pollution and dehumanizing working conditions in supply countries. A CHP government would participate in the production of goods or the provision of services only if they are definitely required in the public sector. As far as the tariffs, we cannot get into a trade war with the U.S. and we should not try. We don't need to impose retaliatory tariffs. I basically say, you sit in front of a fan, turn it on high. Why would you spit in it? It's only going to come back at you.
Okay, thanks, Russ. That does it for that question. We'll move on to the climate policy without a carbon tax. And this one we'll start, well, that's fitting. I guess we'll start with Ray on this one. Recently, a letter was signed by 128 mayors and city officials across Canada calling for climate action from the 5 main party leaders. With the carbon tax now scrapped and unlikely to return, fires out west and floods in the east, how would your party reduce emissions and support greener choices in everyday life? There you go, Ray.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Obviously, we're leaders on this topic, so I was keen for it. Peter, I'd actually assert that the most wealthy among us are actually being subsidized by the taxpayer who's paying for the social and environmental costs resulting from the products they produce. I used to use the tire tax as an example, but I think cigarettes are a better example of where government has taken money from tobacco companies to fix health-related problems caused. And so I humbly and respectfully ask the audience, what exactly is the difference between smoke caused by cigarettes and pollution created by carbon? And not only that, Peter, but taxpayers are currently paying the costs of recycling and garbage pickup, not to mention the cost of our landfills. So, by driving these costs into products, manufacturers will have to innovate. And they'll have to innovate in order to reduce their environmental footprint and reduce their selling prices to consumers. And ultimately, we as taxpayers benefit. Our taxes go down and our environment becomes improved. Now, as a society and as a government, we do have to accurately cost the burden of carbon that's having on our citizens, how it affects our health, how acid rain leads to lower crop production, how pollution and these other costs must be accounted for in the products and services. And these are truly manufactured costs. This is the most right-wing business issue out there. Now, Canada has a golden opportunity to invest in research and development in our universities and our industries, especially right now that the clown down south has eliminated the R&D in its universities. So let's stop the brain drain here. Let's attract the brightest. Let's create new industries and a cleaner way of doing business. People, planet, and prosperity.
Great. Thanks, Ray. Okay, we'll move on to Stephen now. I'll shorten the question a bit. With carbon tax now scrapped and unlikely to return, how would your party reduce emissions and support greener choices in everyday life?
Well, I'm pleased that the carbon tax has been scrapped, and I hope that any attempts to add hidden or targeted carbon taxes are thwarted. I mean, PPC's position is to pull out of the Paris Accord and reject all UN redistributionist and collectivist solutions that, unless universal, won't work anyway. I mean, we have bigger and more immediate challenges to face other than an over-amplified climate panic luxury belief. I don't think the carbon tax worked or could ever properly work. It's another tax on everything and stifles innovation rather than encouraging it by leaving less money available for research and development of new technologies. Pollution is solved by engineers and scientists, and certainly not politicians. To me, the use of government coercion to try and manipulate citizens' behavior is wrong on many levels. This applies to climate, social issues, and economics. You know, making greener choices is up to you, not the government. The more freedom you have and the more money you have left in your possession means the more options you have to live greener, if that's your aim. Only if you're an authoritarian and wishes to meddle in the behavior of other people, your fellow citizens, would you want to force your favorite values and fears and costs onto others. Finally, climate panic is, in my opinion, diverted attention away from other environmental issues like protection of water, wetlands, and our air. Let's work together to prevent governments from ruining our environment through bad policies. I'm thinking like the recent Greenbelt fiasco. You can make greener choices right here, right now. Yes, you need to make sacrifices if that's what's most important to you. Me and a PPC government won't get in your way. It's really up to you as an individual. Don't wait for governments to figure it out because you'll be left waiting for a long, long time. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Next, we'll go to Ryan. With the carbon tax now scrapped and unlikely to return, how would your party reduce emissions and support greener choices in everyday life?
The conservatives want you to believe we have to choose between growing the economy and fighting climate change. We have a plan to do both. A Made in Canada industrial competitiveness strategy will decrease emissions as rapidly and effectively as possible. A Liberal government will accomplish this by making sure big emitters pay while protecting the competitiveness of Canadian industry. This will make sure that as Canada reduces emissions, we are still competitive, make sure companies are able to withstand America's trade war, and that Canada is positioned to take advantage of new opportunities in the global marketplace. We are enabling opportunities for big polluters to support consumers in lowering their carbon footprints. We will work with the province to seek ways for large emitters to support consumer adoption of green technologies and retrofits, such as heat pumps and electric vehicles, which also help lower household energy bills. Promoting fair competition with our trading partners by developing a carbon border adjustment mechanism. This approach would focus on ensuring the competitiveness of Canada's most energy-intensive, trade-exposed sectors and protect Canadians who work in industries such as steel and aluminum. We're going to become a world leader in carbon removal, which will support a broad range of technologies and innovation in carbon removal and accelerate offset protocol development across a range of carbon removal technologies. We will establish broad coverage of climate risk disclosure for companies across Simcoe North. We will be prioritizing working with the provincial, territorial, and international partners to enhance transparency, better assess climate risks and opportunities, and enable the development of a transition plan and help align capital towards a sustainable economy. We will be speeding up approval of clean energy projects while upholding environmental rigor and, of course, Indigenous rights. Our plan provides real incentives for Canadian households on things like homes and retrofits, transportation, and ZEVs. We're going to keep Canadians united in important fights against climate change and laser focus on our economy, healthcare, housing, and threats to our sovereignty from the U.S. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Now we'll go to Russ. With the carbon tax now scrapped and likely return, how would your party reduce emissions and support greener choices in everyday life?
Okay. So mankind has been, we've been entrusted with a great responsibility to steward the earth, to make efficient use of its resources, and to pass it along to future generations for them to use and enjoy. So the CHP recognizes our responsibility to steward and care for the natural environment. CHP will protect Canada's air, soil, and water from destructive contamination by man-made chemicals. Canadians are legitimately concerned about threats to our environment. It is imperative that we focus on cleaning up the real pollution that negatively impacts the lives and health of Canadians. We must leave to future generations a healthy planet with the clean and precious air, water, and soil that is necessary for the flourishing of human, plant, and animal life. CHP Canada recognizes that chemical pollution can be a serious problem and that immediate steps must be taken to address air pollution from particle emissions like nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide, and other types of chemicals. We must work to end water pollution from untreated sewage discharges, ballast and waste dumping at sea, and we must work to end the pollution of both water and soil from overuse of man-made chemicals, including pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. The CHP would work together with industry to restrict the pollution of our water, land, and air, and we would make use of our infrastructure renewal plan to help fund the necessary changes to research, develop, and implement better controls that would help promote a better, healthier lifestyle and control negative environmental factors. We're here for a while. We want to make sure that when we leave, that our future children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, et cetera, have a nice, healthy planet to maybe even better than what we left it for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. Okay, finally, we have Adam. With the carbon tax now scrapped and unlikely to return, how would your party reduce emissions and support greener choices in everyday life?
Thanks, Peter. I think it's worth remembering that we're just coming out of the highest inflation in 40 years. One of the main factors driving inflation was energy. We were the only country in the world to increase taxes on energy during that inflation crisis, which is why we were calling for a reduction, a pause, or an outright reduction in canceling of the carbon tax for the last number of years. So when Mr. Carney reduced the tax, they said they were making life more affordable. So when Canadians are going to fill up at the gas station and they see the prices drop 20%, they should be asking themselves, why didn't the government do this a couple of years ago? So putting that aside, how do we reduce emissions? We have some of the cleanest natural gas in the world, and countries want that natural gas. If we can displace coal from India or China or elsewhere in the world, we will actually be doing more to lower emissions around the world and help save the planet from carbon dioxide. So our position is that actually selling more clean Canadian LNG will help lower emissions around the world. I remember in the 90s when we started talking about pollution, we always said pollution knows no borders. And I agree. And finally, what we need to do is reward Canadian industries and companies through positive tax incentives who produce goods that have a lower carbon footprint than their international counterparts. Canadian aluminum, Canadian steel, agriculture products, concrete. All of these Canadian products, they have a lower carbon footprint than most of their international competitors. So instead of shutting down those industries and punishing them with extra taxes, we need to reward them to produce more. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, question number 4, and we're going to start with Stephen on this one. Support for Indigenous communities. Simcoe North includes several Indigenous communities. How would your party work across the country to improve housing, clean water, healthcare, and economic opportunity? Also, will your party act on any of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action?
Well, thank you, Peter. I have read the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. The PPC has bold ideas for dealing with relations with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. We start from the standpoint that for the vast majority of issues, Indigenous Canadians have the same needs and wants as the rest of us. I mean, good healthcare, education, infrastructure, safety, free speech, free movement, a prosperous economy, jobs, and entrepreneurial opportunities. The PPC insists that Indigenous people enjoy all the same rights, freedoms, and opportunities as the rest of us Canadians. Firstly, we would abolish the patently racist and stupidly named Indian Act. The Act gives the federal government way too much power to control the lives of Indigenous peoples. Yeah, Indigenous people have been treated horribly in the past, and much abuse continues. But, you know, the state created a gulag for them and forced them to live in it, often out of sight, out of mind, out of reach, and often facing pollution. I mean, the state told those parents that the government knows best how to raise their children and created the residential school system. I'd say that past treatment of Indigenous Canadians is more disgusting to a libertarian like me than it is to social justice-focused progressives. The PPC would focus on ensuring that Indigenous people on reserve enjoy full property rights, especially the right to own land and housing, use their assets as collateral, but in a way that provides true Indigenous financial autonomy and freedom from exploitation. This may require some creative banking solutions and new government policies that fully respect Indigenous freedoms, responsibility, fairness, and mutual respect. As part of PPC's overall belief in decentralization, we would devolve the maximum amount of authority to local Indigenous governments and make sure that this funding is all transparent and handled responsibly.
Thanks, Stephen. Next, go to Ryan. Simcoe North includes several Indigenous communities. How would your party work across the country, improving housing, clean water, healthcare, and economic opportunity? Will your party act on any of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action?
Simcoe North is home to the Indigenous communities such as the Beausoleil and Rama, as well as a large Métis population. I, as well as the Liberal Party, am committed to reconciliation, providing education and training, and building stronger, healthier Indigenous communities. The Liberal Party will work in full partnership with First Nation, Inuit, and Métis to advance the rights of Indigenous people through a distinction-based approach. Building a strong economy means an economy where everyone has opportunity. Education and skills training is a critical gateway, but too many Indigenous peoples face barriers. To break down these barriers, the Liberal Party is launching a new fund which will support the training of more Indigenous doctors, teachers, builders, amongst other priority areas. We're also accelerating funding to post-secondary education so more First Nations, Inuit, and Métis students can go to school, and we are investing in the associated infrastructure. Liberal government realizes that in order to build a strong Canada, we must include Indigenous communities. To help facilitate this, we are doubling the Indigenous loan guarantee from 5 to 10 billion. We are exploring options for an Indigenous infrastructure bank to address access to capital. And we will work in partnership with Indigenous communities and Indigenous housing providers to directly support building housing. The Liberal Party will immediately introduce and pass legislation affirming that First Nations have a human right to clean drinking water. We are increasing investments in Indigenous mental health, healing, and wellness centers and friendship centers. We also want to co-develop evidence-based food security approaches. We'll also work together to advance economic reconciliation. This will support Indigenous peoples and communities in overcoming long-standing economic injustices and enable self-determination of their own economic future. And of course, we will continue to support Indigenous early learning and childcare centers.
Thanks, Ryan. Next, we'll go to Russ. Simcoe North includes several Indigenous communities. How would your party work across the country to improve housing, clean water, healthcare, and economic opportunity? Will your party act on any of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action?
Yeah, so we live in a great country with great opportunities for everyone, and not just the select few. Um, every person that lives in this country should have everything available to them, and for a great way of life, whether it be clean air, clean water, and just the basics, the basis of life. That's our right, is our right to live. I believe we need to address our First Nations people and truly find out what their needs are and how we can band together to correct the wrongs. I feel that far too long our governments have just thrown money at our First Nation groups to satisfy the needs at the moment. Just like what Stephen had just said there, it feels like whenever there's an issue, this is the only time that we ever hear something come out of the Indigenous community. Why is it that we just seem to be just put them aside, throw them into a corner whenever they require something? We really need to get to the root of all this. I believe that the current system is broken and it needs to be overhauled, whether it's skills training, building infrastructures, or assist them with developing their own businesses, ideas, and developments. Why don't we just take the whole structure, go in there, find out from each individual person what they truly need, whether we need to, again, rebuild the entire community, whether we go in and say, what do you guys need to make something to build? When people have a purpose in life, they are happier. When they put something together, when they're creating employment, when they're creating money, people are happier. This is what we need. We need to go in there and not just throw money just to kind of silence them. I feel like sometimes, and forgive me for this analogy, but I feel sometimes like we just treat them as children that we put into a corner to keep them quiet while we have other people into the family room. And that's not right. They are not children. They are not less human. They are human beings that deserve respect. They are human beings that deserve a great place to grow up, to raise their children just like the rest of us would want. Would we want to live in those communities, each and every one of us? And I guarantee the answer is no. So then why do we subject these people, the Indigenous community, to this type of living structures or living conditions? We should be appalled, and we need to fix this. So we need to go in there, we need to come up with a plan, and we need to rework and redevelop everything that they have.
Thanks, Russ. Okay, now Adam. Simcoe North includes several Indigenous communities. How would your party work across the country to improve housing, clean water, healthcare, and economic opportunity? Will your party act on any of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action?
Thank you very much, Peter. I think you heard from all of our candidates. We are so blessed to live in our area, surrounded by and living with wonderful First Nations and Métis communities, Bow Slave First Nation, Chippewas of Rama, and one of the largest, if not the largest, Métis community in Ontario. We have a lot to do also to help protect and preserve tradition, culture, and language. But in terms of education, we need to let people know that we are living in such an important area. The fish weirs just outside of Aurelia, the Narrows, are older than the pyramids. This is incredible history for our area. We have had civilizations and people here for a very, very long time. So we're very blessed to live in this area. So how can we live and work together to improve the lives of everyone? I think we obviously need to make more strides on clean drinking water, as has been mentioned. But also, I want to pick up on something that Ray Little mentioned earlier. I think there's incredible opportunities with respect to ecotourism. We have and live in some of the most beautiful parts of this country, if not the world. And I think there are many opportunities to have people come, and who better to work with our local Indigenous groups, First Nations and Métis, to teach them about our area, their traditions, their languages. I think Rama has done an excellent job when entrepreneurial and bringing many people here with world-class experiences and the shows that they bring in. I would like to continue to work with all of our communities to increase tourism, to increase economic reconciliation and economic opportunities, but also to educate Canadians and local people about the rich history that we have here.
Great. Thanks, Adam. And finally, we'll go to Ray. Simcoe North includes several Indigenous communities. How would your party work across the country to improve housing, clean water, healthcare, and economic opportunity? Will your party act on any of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action?
Yeah, well, thanks, Peter. First of all, the Greens respect Indigenous sovereignty, including free, prior, and informed consent on all decisions affecting their lands and their communities. The fact is that Indigenous people in Simcoe North have had a different experience with Canada's healthcare system. And this ranges from what's referred to as trauma from birth alerts and damaging assumptions about their lifestyle. And so the Green Party supports Indigenous-led training of healthcare professionals, including recruiting and training healthcare workers from Indigenous communities. And you might like to know that since March 31st, the Chippewas of Rama First Nation have been under yet another boil water alert. I'd like to thank South Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce for bringing this up. This is absolutely a federal issue. And as far as I know, until today, no politician has been talking about it. We're too wealthy of a country to be dealing with this reality. These communities need long-term, predictable investment. This short-term patchwork approach to funding just doesn't work. And so the Greens support the right of Indigenous nations to benefit from the development of their lands, and job creation must be rooted in community priorities, not imposed development. The Greens are committed to nothing about you without you. All policies affecting Indigenous communities in Simcoe North will be co-developed with their leadership, because I understand reconciliation is not a symbolic gesture. It's a fundamental change in how we make decisions. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Ray. Perfect. Now we're going on to the final question, and we'll start with Ryan. Prison standards for violent offenders. Should the federal government set stricter national standards for sentencing for violent offenders? If so, how? If not, what are the alternatives?
The Liberal government is in favor of stricter sentencing for violent offenders as well as for organized crime. We'll also be making it harder to get bail for those charged with violent car theft for criminal organizations, home invasions, human trafficking, and smuggling offenses. We're going to do this by establishing a reverse onus for these crimes. We're going to require the court to prohibit possession of firearms and weapons for someone charged with a violent offense. In terms of stricter sentencing, we will toughen sentencing guidelines so they are stricter for repeat offenders of car thefts as well as violent and organized crimes. We will accomplish this by directing the courts to primarily consider denunciation and deterrence and allow for consecutive sentencing for these types of crimes and all serious and violent offenses. We're also focused on preventing crime before it happens by extending the Building Safe and Community Fund and prioritizing approaches to steer youth away from criminal activity. The Liberal government is also providing youth helps to get started with their first job by connecting young people with the jobs and skill development opportunities they need to launch their professional lives. Additionally, we are providing 100,000 youths a year with mental health care to make sure our children are given the best possible opportunities to succeed and be a productive member of society.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. We'll next go to Russ. Should the federal government set stricter national standards for sentencing for violent offenders? If so, how? If not, what are the alternatives?
Thank you. Yeah, so often offenders are back on the streets before the police have even completed the paperwork. So that's wrong. It's true that many criminals have themselves been victims of crime. Many have been raised in dysfunctional homes. Many have been victims of sexual, physical, or mental abuse. It's true that many of them do need healing from emotional wounds. However, two wrongs don't make a right. Every citizen, regardless of their past, must obey the laws of the land, must respect the rights and property of others, and must control their own anger, passion, and greed. If we allow misguided compassion to shield violent criminals, even young persons, from the consequences of their crime, we will quickly lose what civilization we still have left. Canadian law must protect honest, hardworking Canadians and their families from theft, violence, vandalism, and other unsafe behaviors. CHP's Canada's criminal justice system policy focuses on restitution and public safety. Nonviolent criminals, those who have committed theft and vandalism without harming or threatening others, should be made to repay those whose property has been stolen or damaged. As much as possible, the victims should be made whole. That's what we mean by restitution. Dangerous offenders, violent and sexual criminals, those who use guns in the commission of their crimes, and peddlers of drugs and child pornography should be kept behind bars until they are no longer a threat to public safety. Young offenders that commit murder, rape, assault, armed robbery, etc. should all be raised to adult court, although there should be special rehabilitation facilities for those young offenders. Age, for youth should not be used as an excuse for unacceptable criminal behavior. The CHP's criminal justice policy rests on these two pillars of restitution and public safety. Up to 2/3 of our prison space are occupied by nonviolent criminals. In most cases, these people should not be in jail. Instead, they should be working to support their families and to pay just restitution to their victims. Restitution has a profoundly rehabilitative effect on offenders, truly dangerous offenders, violent and sexual criminals that use guns in the commission of the crimes, and peddlers of child porn should be behind bars until they are no longer a threat to the public safety.
Thanks, Russ.
Okay.
Now we'll go to Adam. Should the federal government set stricter national standards for sentencing for violent offenders? If so, how? If not, what are the alternatives?
Thanks very much for the question, Peter. Crime is on many people's minds. I think we have to acknowledge that it was the current government that reduced the restrictions on bail to make it easier for individuals to get bail. They also removed mandatory minimums for a number of offenses, including offenses where a gun is used. And so absolutely, we need to reverse those changes that the government has made to make it harder to get bail for repeat violent offenders. The good news is there's not as many very dangerous criminals in Canada. The problem is they are very productive. They are repeat offenders. We need to deal with them very seriously. And it is the Conservative plan that has been endorsed by a number of police associations across the country. And so we believe that we need to treat these repeat violent offenders very seriously, including allowing parole sentences and life sentences to be stacked. Pierre has said, and Conservatives have said, that we would use the notwithstanding clause to make sure that some of these worst criminals would feel the penalties. We agree in the case of the Bissonnette decision, the individual who went into a mosque and killed 6 people. The trial judge originally said getting parole after 25 years was not long enough. So he gave 40 years, but the Supreme Court struck that down. We believe that was a wrong decision, and that individual should not receive parole at least for 40 years. These are the kinds of changes that we need to make our community safe. We do not believe that going after law-abiding hunters and anglers and confiscating their property is going to reduce gun violence in our cities. So that is how we're going to keep people safe in our communities.
Thanks, Adam. Next, we go to Ray. Should the federal government set stricter national standards for sentencing for violent offenders? If so, how? If not, what are the alternatives?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I don't think anybody in this debate, including me, would like lighter sentences for violent criminals. Yet in Canada, our judicial system is set up on the premise of rehabilitating prisoners. It's more cost effective and it's more humane. Still, I do maintain that we've got to do something about repeat offenders. Clearly, the rehabilitation program isn't working for them. But here are the facts. As of 2023, violent crime in Canada is down 25% from 2003 levels, so a 20-year period. Violent crime currently sits at about 0.4% of all crime. Now, I would point out that gun crime is rising. But Peter, as far as I can tell, this is largely a national issue, and it's been manufactured by the Blue Party to gain at the expense of the Red Party. If the Blues really want to get tough on crime, we'll do three things. We'll address the affordability issue. 30% of Simcoe North residents can't afford to feed their families. We know that the lack of affordability leads directly to crime, leads directly to intimate partner violence, and in fact, 25% of all calls to the police can be tied directly to the affordability issue. Second, it is high time Canada begins to address online crime and fraud. I've got ideas about these. I posted them online at the Simcoe North Green Party website. And finally, instead of wasting taxpayers' money and time on Supreme Court challenges, we should refocus the conversation on some kind of method of addressing repeat offenders. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Ray. And finally, we have Stephen. Should the federal government set stricter national standards for sentencing for violent offenders? If so, how? If not, what are the alternatives?
Well, I'd say yes, absolutely. We need stricter and clearer criminal laws and clear, consistent, and yes, punitive sentencing. Deterrence and removal of dangerous offenders from society are the main goals. I'm highly skeptical of rehabilitation for hardcore criminals. The rate of recidivism is very troubling, and the consideration of a person's background, group identity, and other irrelevant factors in sentencing needs to end. It is easy to not be a criminal. Let's make it really hard and painful for anybody who tries to be one. And I disagree that poverty and economic challenges are a root cause or excuse for crime. That's a slander on the honorable and law-abiding poor. Poverty is not an excuse to be a criminal, and most poor people aren't. So let's avoid that slander. Tougher sentencing is often thwarted by activist judges. We will need to find ways of reorienting and, where necessary, removing and overruling outlier judges with agendas that aren't strictly aligned with enforcing the laws as written and as intended. I believe these tools exist, and although they may be cumbersome, we would work within our Constitution to use them. Another problem is availability of justice and restitution for victims and the disadvantaged. In too many cases, money speaks too loudly, and human rights and common decency and fairness seem to be overwhelmed. We need to spend more on the justice system to make sure the process moves swiftly and decisively and is equally accessible to all. Another way to prevent crime is to allow Canadians to defend themselves and their homes using firearms, yes, if necessary. The PPC would reverse most restrictions on firearms and make it legal to obtain them, including handguns, for the purposes of self-defense. A well-armed and well-trained citizenry, especially in rural areas, is the ultimate deterrent against violent crime. Question of how to do it? Well, that's the hard work of Parliament. We need to write good laws and regulations that result in proper enforcement and proper interpretation. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Well, that's it for the questions. We'll go on to the conclusions now. And since I shortchanged you all on the 1 minute introduction, I'll give you 2 minutes for the conclusion, but if you want to go up to 3 minutes, that's fine. No, I won't. We'll ring the bell at 3 minutes. And for the conclusions, we'll start with Russ.
So I just want to thank everybody for coming out and all the hard work that everybody's doing. I think we all know and love this country that we have, and everybody wants to make changes and make it better. And so that's what we're all here to do. As a Christian Heritage Party, that's our main focus. I just want to tell people that don't get hung up on the word Christian at the beginning of there. We're not out to convert people. We're not out to thump Bibles to everybody. That's not the objective of the Christian Heritage Party. This country was based on and began on biblical principles. So the Ten Commandments, and that's what we want to get back to. It's just we want honest, we want ethical, we want moral. We'd like a transparent government. And for those of you who have, are tired of the rotation where we get one party in and then we like them for a while and then we don't like them, then we bring another party in and we don't like them for a while and then we keep going back and forth, back and forth. This shows that we do have other parties to look at. I just ask everybody to do your homework. There's a lot of people out there that speak a good talk, but I just want everybody just do your homework. Research everything, research what the parties stand for, and when it comes down to election day, just make your well-educated decision. And I appreciate everybody and everybody that supported me. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Great. I'll go into Adam now for conclusion.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting our discussion tonight. And I also want to thank all of my fellow candidates who have stepped up to put their name on a ballot to try to improve our community and our country. Democracy really is a wonderful thing. I'm Adam Chambers. It's been an honor to be your representative in Ottawa for the last 3.5 years. We were very, very well served by a number of incredible MPs prior to me, Bruce Stanton, Paul Deviler, Doug Lewis, in my lifetime. I've tried to continue on that record of strong community service and being a strong voice for Simcoe North in Ottawa. I grew up in Midland. I went to St. Teresa's High School. I got a business and a law degree from the University of Western Ontario. And I've worked in the private sector and the public sector, and had the great honor of having Jim Flaherty, who was, in my view, one of the greatest finance ministers in our country's history. I was an advisor to him during the financial crisis, and I watched him successfully navigate that challenge with the country. And as one of his advisors, I was able to go with him and attend with him as an advisor to G7 and World Bank and IMF meetings in Washington. And so I do believe that experience matters. We are in a very difficult position at the moment. And so I believe I have the experience and the track record of success, a track record of experience in the private sector and the public sector to continue working on behalf of Simcoe North in Ottawa. I would mostly say, there's lots of policies, but I'll leave you with a thought. It sounds as though the current government is trying to convince you that the last 10 years didn't exist, or that they've now somehow found solutions to problems that they themselves had a hand in creating. This is ultimately why I feel like we need a change in Ottawa. We need a refreshing change to help lower your taxes, keep criminals behind bars, to think about growing our economy in different ways. And so my commitment to you is to always listen, to collaborate. I even sponsored a bill with a Liberal senator, and my wonderful wife Jane, she's a Liberal. She keeps me grounded and helps me understand that not everybody sees everything from the same way. So my commitment is to always listen to you. If I'm lucky enough to be your representative again, I will work with my colleagues and with you to make our community better and Canada better. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam. Next for a concluding statement, we'll go to Ray.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, I grew up on a farm in southwestern Ontario, so I know a little something about hard work. During my 35 years in Aurelia, I believe I've really blossomed. I've become very highly educated, and I'm an extremely successful business person. And, I kind of thank Stephen Leacock. I followed his words about luck and hard work. And so I've had my own consulting company now for about 25 years. And I've spent the past 10 or 15 years in executive roles at some very large companies. Our success there has been built through a commitment to people, planet, and prosperity. And while I realize tariffs are always on people's minds, I have written extensively about this topic online, and I invite you to access about a half a dozen, 10 articles via the Simcoe Green Party .ca website news section where you can find out more. And today, I hope that I've been able to demonstrate to you a thorough understanding of the top 3 issues that Simcoe North residents have spoken to me about: housing, healthcare, and affordability. So I'll close today with 2 asks. First, I'd ask you to consider the outsized voice Simcoe North residents would have by sending a Green Party member to Parliament. I'd be in a very unique position where I'd be able to help shape any party's legislation as long as it incorporated the pillars of people, planet, and prosperity. And the second thing I'd ask of you today, I'd ask you to seek out and find your local food bank, whether that's online or in person. And if you can afford it, I'd ask you to give so much that it hurts. And so, in closing, I'd like to thank the volunteers from South Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce for your work and for your volunteerism. And I'd like to thank all of the active participants today for your commitment to democracy. Thank you very much. Vote Green.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, great. Now we're going to go for conclusion to Stephen. It's all yours.
Well, hello, I'm Stephen Mack. A bit about myself. I was born in Toronto, raised there, went to school there. I have a degree in engineering science, and I own and operate a high-tech electronics design and manufacturing company right here in Simcoe North. I design and make smartwatches, and we export them around the world, and have been dealing with tariffs and stuff for my entire career, and it's just life and how you get things done. I'm a family man. I've raised 2 successful sons who I'm very proud of, and I've been living here in Simcoe North for since 2016. And I'd like to say that, well, I'd like to ask more. I mean, have you had enough? Have you had enough of the red-blue seesaw? I mean, the last 60 years, we've been having government's scope growing, deficits growing, and then the productivity of Canadians has been steadily decreasing, as if there was a mathematical relationship there. Choosing between 2 almost identical options is not going to change anything. I think we're facing some real challenges, and we need not just minor tweaks, but some real full control inputs here. We need real change. And that's something that the PPC can offer. You know, I'm discouraged by this election. It's turned into a popularity referendum on the American president. And then if it's not that, it's talking about the different hood ornaments at the end of the machine, on top of the machines, the red machine, the blue machine. There's too much obsession with the personality and character of a leader and totally ignoring the quality of local representation. And, you know, I think Adam has done an okay job, and I've talked to him quite a bit. We get along. I advocate for the 8% or so of Simcoe North people that are my supporters, and I represent them not just during an election, but between elections. And that's what I pledge to do. I pledge to be an advocate. I don't just pop up when it's election time. I'm always working to influence municipal, provincial, federal politics. I mean, one advantage of PPC, and I'll say the Greens have it too, is that we don't whip votes. And a whip vote is where the party leader tells you how to vote. And I feel sorry for Adam, and I feel sorry for Ryan, because when you elect a liberal or conservative, the back office tells you what to do. The leader tells you what to do. You don't have the true total freedom to represent the people of Simcoe North, no matter how good a person you are. Now, I do not have that restriction. I can think freely, I can listen to everybody, and I can represent I would be like a one-man party representing Simcoe North. So I would say
10 seconds.
the last word is, I mean, a vote for the PPC is a vote for yourself. So I'd like to say, I'd like to thank everybody, and I think I can truly advocate for all of you. Vote PPC, and you know what? Even if I don't win, a vote for me still means that I will have more clout when I do talk to other politicians and other representatives. So
Okay,
no
time's up.
vote is wasted. Vote your values.
Thanks, Stephen. Finally, we'll go to Ryan for a conclusion. It's all yours.
Thanks again for the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce for putting this together, and thank you to the other candidates for participating. It's great to see so many people so passionate about our country. My backstory is not too uncommon for a lot of Canadians. I'm the son of an immigrant, and I grew up playing hockey in the winter and spending summers exploring all the beautiful parks, lakes, and beaches Simcoe North has to offer. My educational background, I got a degree in criminology from the University of Western Ontario, and then went on to obtain a Juris Doctor, or a law degree from Bond University in Australia. I'm currently an agent for international alcoholic beverage manufacturers, such as Vineyards, and help get their products into Canadian markets. Canada is the best country in the world. Our sovereignty is under threat. America's unjustified trade war is an attempt to weaken us, and we will not let that happen. It's time to build a future that makes Canada strong. We can give ourselves so much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. Building one Canadian economy, for example, can expand our economy by up to $200 billion. Proof that we are strongest when we are united. Ladies and gentlemen, when heading to the polls, please ask yourself, who is the best person to deal with the uncertainty and the tariffs as a result of Trump? I believe unequivocally that Mark Carney is that person. He has the real world international experience and the education to put Canada on top. Thank you. And of course, get out and vote, but for the Liberal Party. And as always, keep your elbows up.
Thanks, Ryan. It was great. A lot of good ideas. I appreciate everyone to be here tonight, taking time away from their busy schedules and families to join us. Along with all the volunteers, all your campaigns, there's a lot of work that goes on. It's as a voter, I mean, it's easy for us to do this once a year, but I mean once every 4 years. But you guys really do a lot of work, and especially behind the scenes. So thank you. Certainly like to thank all the people who sent in the questions. I really do appreciate that. Also thank Jenna and Ryan here at the chamber for putting this together. I'd like to encourage everyone, of course, tuning in, and for those who have been watching us on YouTube, to vote, of course. Definitely vote and get friends and relatives and everything else to vote. It's so important. We can't take that for granted. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. I appreciate for everyone viewing this. It's such an important thing that we do have a democracy here, that we listen to all the ideas, and that's how we're going to grow as a country. So I appreciate it. Everyone have a good night, and thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.